Yes, yes, team. A huge welcome to the Total Mental Performance podcast. Today is one of my favorite moments of the podcast, and this is what I call a full circle moment. And this is when somebody that's listening to the podcast inquires, they sign up, they go through the entire evolution progress, having listened to tons and tons of guests along the way, and then they're sat in front of me in the podcast talking about their journey. And today's guest is Nick Screeton. He's a body transformation coach that helps men become the best versions of themselves in body, in mind, and performance. And I've been coaching Nick this year, and this guy's just got a great energy. He's taken risks, he's dove deep, and he's got a story to share with all of us. So, Nick, mate, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. And it's a cool moment, huh?
This is honestly this is one of the goals. I remember I've listened to so many of your podcasts up until reaching out. I think I probably listened to about 20 or 30 episodes. And then one podcast resonated with me. And I got in contact. I thought, I can't put this off any longer. And I thought it'd be so cool to eventually be on your podcast. So honestly, it's an absolute privilege and pleasure to be here. And thank you for your help. Thank you for your support. It's great. And I'm excited about jumping on this episode.
Amazing, amazing. What were the episodes would you say that resonated that made you go, crud, I'm gonna get in touch?
There was quite a lot, and I think all of them I took some kind of value from. I remember listening to Ben Hawksworth, and I thought that was really powerful. I remember just taking how he was talking about having like a really active mind and how to kind of channel his engine, so to speak. I think he used the analogy of like a Formula One racing car, and it's about how do you learn how to manage that car. That was an episode that was really good. There was one on money mindset with Lewis McFarlane, I think it was. That was really interesting. So I think all the podcasts I took something from, but they're two that particularly stood out to me. And you also recommended the Neil Shoney podcast as
Yeah,
well. And that was something that I could really relate to. And I thought, if I can get the same result that he's got, I'll be a very happy man. And it's safe to say that I've gotten some really good results since working with you.
amazing, amazing. Yeah, and it for me. I just get this moment of joy because if you think about a podcast, it's pretty run one way. Like I have a conversation with someone, but I don't see the impact or the result. You know, at least with content, you see people engaging with your stories, or right, like leaving comments or liking or sharing your stuff, or they drop you messages. But a podcast is very much a conversation, and the way that I see podcasting is it's your opportunity to go hang out with a couple of people, and they probably have something quite interesting to learn, and you can be a fly on the wall. And I think that's the really interesting thing about this medium. But I have generally, obviously, we look at the statistics, and the statistics are really, really solid. We get a 95% listen rate on average for most of our episodes, which is really high for the podcasting industry. But I don't really see how this lands. So it's only when people message me or when they apply to come and work with us at TMP do I actually hear about, yeah, this podcast changed the game. I can't stop binge listening to these. They've been really, really helpful. That's where I go, okay, this is helping people. And this is helping get knowledge out there to the world for free for people that need it. And it is just about being consistent like in any game and just keep doing it and keep showing up and it will work. And if you're listening to this and you've listened to a lot of the episodes and you listen to Nick in a moment, you're going to think, fuck, I want to be sat with that set. I want to learn that. Oh, you can, because it happens again and again and again. So Nick, mate, thank you so much for coming on. If you could give a little bit of background, how long have you been coaching? How did you get into the industry? How did it all start?
Yeah, so I mean, it feels like a long career, and I'm 35 now, but I still feel like I'm like a 20-year-old starting out at the beginning. But I was been coaching for 15 years, so I started as a one-to-one coach, left university with this big ambition to build a big, massive business. And I came up with this idea to have a boot camp, because boot camps weren't actually that big back then. Now they're on every single street corner pretty much. And I came up with this idea to start a business called The Only Way is Boot Camp, because The Only Way is Essex was absolutely massive back then. I thought, this is a genius idea. And looking back, I'm so glad I didn't run with that idea, because it's terrible. And personally, I don't like that show anymore. But I started out doing boot camps in the park. Then I progressed to personal training, built up my own business, which was the first 2 years, to be honest with you, probably the hardest 2 years of my life, like knocking on people's doors, getting rejected, living off my wife's wage. She was like on £8 an hour as a nanny, but I just kept hustling, kept grinding, managed to get a deal on Groupon, which put me in front of a lot of people. And then pretty much overnight, even though I was working for like 60p a session, because Groupon, they just want to sell volume. So I was working for 60p a session, did that for 3 months, but I knew that if I could do a good job, those people would sign up to full packages. And then pretty much after that 3 months of just doing 60, 70 sessions a week, half the people that did the Groupon deal signed up to like 300, £500 packages. And all of a sudden there was this kid that was like written off. Like all my friends were like, you need to get a job. My dad was like, come on, Nick, like you need to start maybe thinking about other options. Sally, my wife, always believed in me, but it was just this grind. And then all of a sudden it was like I had this injection of cash. I bought a website. I started doing like Google AdWords, got SEO. So I was quite kind of forward thinking. There wasn't a lot of local PTs doing that. Then the business just started to take off. I started to get clients. I started to get results, started to get Google reviews and testimonials, started to build my reputation around Sheffield. And I pretty much did the one-to-one coaching for pretty much about 10 or 12 years, got my own house, got a gym built in the house, which was really, really cool. So that's kind of trying to summarize it without kind of taking all day. That's pretty much my story. And then 3 years ago, when COVID hit, I pretty much moved everything online. And that's where I'm at today. The last 3 years, I've been helping guys get lean, helping high-performing guys, doctors, dentists, business owners, either people that are already established but lacking when it comes to health and fitness, or guys that have read the likes of Atomic Habits and they're on the path to becoming something new and better, but just need a bit of extra guidance and direction, but they're already driven, they're already highly motivated.
I hear, I hear. The coaches that know you will be going, well, what's Nick got to work on? Like, why would he take on a program with TMP? It's interesting. Before this call, I was looking at the earliest day. I was looking at the application form, and I was like, oh, that's actually what did Nick actually put down? And what's interesting on the application form is there's a lot less detail than what we actually unpacked in that first session. So, what was it that made you raise your hand and go, all right, let me go and see if mental performance or working on my mind is the thing?
Yeah. So I think prior to working with yourself, I'd already done a lot of personal development. I'd already had a lot of coaches. I'd already read a lot of books, Atomic Habits, Think and Grow Rich, all the kind of personal development stuff. So I'd already come to you in a good place. But I'd heard of you for the last probably 18 months or so. And I was just really impressed with how you spoke, just hearing how you helped other people. And I think for me, it wasn't like I came to you in a bad place. I was in a good place. My business was in a good place. My finances were in a good place. My headspace was in a good place. But I knew there were still things holding me back. And you can only hit what you can see. And there was I knew there was blind spots. I knew there was things holding me back. And just playing probably a bit of a safe game, I probably got to a point where I was comfortable. I'd achieved everything that I wanted to achieve. And I was almost scared of going to that next level. So I realized that you can always get better. It doesn't matter what level you get to. And I saw the high performance that you're working with. There's a lot of people on the podcast that you've had on that I really look up to. And I thought, well, this guy is able to help them. Like I can just tell your language. You can tell the mindset coaches who have read Atomic Habits and then all of a sudden they're a mindset coach versus ones that have actually walked the walk. Like you've helped a lot of people. You've been that entrepreneur yourself. You've failed as an entrepreneur. You've experienced the lowest of the low, when it comes to your own emotions and the stuff that you've shared on the podcast about wanting to end your own life. So I was like, this is a guy that's not only got the mental performance side nailed down, he's also helped other people. And he's also been through one heck of a journey, which in itself is very courageous. So for me, it was like, listen, I just need to work with Kieran.
Yeah, and it was a big risk for you when you went, I'm in, let's do it. And you went and made it happen. And you might have heard me typing and clicking just then. I wrote down, I always pick up the title as I'm speaking, and I wrote down from good to great because you were in a good spot. You weren't in a bad spot. A lot of my clients, the clients I work with now one-to-one are one in two places. Number one, things are accelerating and growing at such a speed. They're like, holy fucking shit, I can't handle this. And they start to, I call this altitude sickness. They're like, I can't handle all of this success or all this energy or fucking hell, what's going on? And it's helping them maintain stability through chaos and scale. But then I have another type of client where that client is in a place where things are good. They're all right. They don't need to rock the boat. If we look at all of the metrics of success, They're all there. But deep down, there's something missing. Deep down, they know there's more. And they know that I do believe that ambitious minds are different to other minds. And there is an element of progression required, and usually progression at a much higher speed at what's usually happening. And I think what I wrote down there was from good to great. You're in a good spot, but
Yeah.
you knew there was more, but you couldn't quite know what that was. Can you describe your experience of that?
What, in terms of just knowing that there was more potential?
Yeah, like how did you know?
I just knew because I think, when you look around you, and I'm in a lot of different like business masterminds, I've been surrounded by a lot of high performance people, and I just think, well, I know that I've got a lot to offer. Like my journey's been 15 years in the making, and I've invested a lot. I've invested about £120,000 to this date to get to where I am. And I see people out there who are doing really well, and they're just leaning into things and just going to that next level. And I thought, I want a piece of that. I know that I'm capable of more. I know that I want to achieve more. And also overcoming this belief that just because I don't need anything else, I'm financially free. I've got a great business, a lovely wife and kids. I've got everything that I ever dreamed of. I always felt guilty of like I should just be happy with where I'm at. But actually there was this kind of like inner yearning of, yeah, but it's okay to want more. It's okay to get to that next level. So there's almost a part of, feeling a bit of an imposter. I should just be grateful for my lot. But actually knowing deep down that, no, I want more and I'm going to go for more.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I don't necessarily, sometimes as I think more existentially, I don't think it's always necessarily the stuff of more. It's the challenge of more. It's the challenge and the progression. And that's really what we're looking for. Am I progressing? Am I growing? Every human being, they have different needs for growth, and growth can become in a number of different areas. But if you are ambitious, you will always reach a point where you consolidate and you're happy and you're like, I've sussed it, I've nailed it. And then slowly over time, you stop playing to win and you start playing to not lose. You start playing to play it safe. And that's where you start to go inwards a little bit and you start to kind of think, do I want to rock the boat? Do I not? But deep down, there's always that voice in your head that's like, you're capable of more. You have more potential. You can go and do some really incredible things, but you're not doing it. And why? And that question is always going to haunt the ambitious ones of us. But it isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just some of us have not necessarily desires, but we have needs for growth. The question is, are those needs for growth happening from a scarcity, fear, not feeling enough, not feeling worthy, and trying to prove oneself? Or are they coming out of abundance? Well, I'm enough as I am, and I have enough, and that's okay. I just want to go out and see what I can do. It's a very different attitude. So if you're going to describe, okay, well, looking at back now, whether that's playing to win, playing to lose, or when that shift happened, how would you describe that?
Well, I'd say when I came to you, I was playing not to lose because I was scared of everything kind of falling down. I'd built up, a certain business, a level of finance, and I was like, this is great. Like I've achieved more than I thought it was ever possible. And I don't want that to go. There's this fear of like luck that I'd kind of stumbled there. But then we did a great exercise where we basically like visualized the future, and I had to step into two identities. So there's one identity if I was to continue on the path that I was on, which was in a good position but not truly fulfilled, or to step to the next level and to step into this new identity, to go to the next level with my business, to grow and to take the next steps of my career. And I imagine myself in both of those positions, and I realized that the person that I wanted to step into was the ambitious person, the person that goes to the next level. So that was like a really, really helpful exercise. It just made me realize that, I'm not going to be fulfilled if I carry on doing what I'm doing, because it's like anything, the more exposure you get, the more it just becomes normal. You see a millionaire, it's great to begin with, but then all of a sudden it's like, it wears off, and exposure to anything positive or negative, you eventually become desensitized to it. So I think for me, it was that realization that if I kept on the path that I was on, I was probably not only going to maintain, I was probably going to slowly decline, because I wasn't feeling challenged. I just felt like I could do everything with my eyes closed. And you kind of encouraged me to think about different options. And I came to my own conclusion that I wanted to push forward, and you've supported me on that journey.
Yeah. And so the technique he's referencing, essentially what I do is I get the client to visualize 2 or 3 versions of them, depending on the various different paths that they have. One is staying the same and keep doing what they're doing for the next 12 months. And then another one is usually the path that they're kind of uneasy of. And when you get somebody to visualize that and step into that person and visualize being that person in first person, what you're doing is you're taking out all of this analysis of the brain of, it should be this or this or this or this. And you start breaking down all the equations and you're stepping into, how do I feel? How do I think and feel in relation to these 2 pathways? Whilst the safe option, when you're thinking, is the logical thing, as you stepped into it, you realized on an emotional level it wasn't the right thing for you. Now, on the flip side, the brain is telling you, don't take the risk, like play it safe, we don't need to take that risk. When you stepped into that 12 months on, having taken the risk and moved forward, you felt a lot more fulfilled. And the puzzles that we get to solve at TMP, we're very, in the global context, we're some of the most fortunate human beings in the world, because all of our puzzles we're solving are puzzles of abundance. We've got all of our basic needs met. This is about self-actualization. How far can I go? What can I achieve? How can I do that? But do it in a way where I feel less pressure. I feel more of myself. I feel more authentic. I have more confidence. And it's not about just being in a safe space. It's allowing you to step into a brave space, having the bravery to go, yeah, fucking, I'm going to do this. Like, let's go. And if we look at your journey, you've done an excellent job at that. When we look back at some of the thinking and the feelings that were stopping you from really playing to win, what was the root cause of that? Where did that all come from?
I think it was the fear of failing and letting down my family. Since having my 2 kids, Noah who's 6, Dyson at 3, it's this sense of responsibility. So I've worked so hard to get to the position that I'm at. And it was this fear of, well, just play it safe because I don't want to put other people at risk. So there was a lot of fear of, what if this goes wrong? What if I put those guys at risk, my family at risk? And I think I was playing not to lose. It was evident with my thinking. It was, what have I got to lose rather than what have I got to gain? And not actually realizing I could still hold on to everything that I built, but work towards something that inspired me more. So that was the kind of like the tipping point. Actually, I can still have all this, but that's not to say I still can't progress forwards.
Yeah, it's not black and white thinking. Black and white thinking gets us in trouble. It's either this or this. Well, who says it's that? And those that can learn to operate in the grey are the ones that are able to manage chaos the best. When you look at that fear of failure, where was that born? Where did that come from?
I suppose I've always had a fear of failing. And I think it's also that fear of failing publicly, because people around me have seen my success, especially over the last 3 years. And it's that feeling of like, what if I do something and I get knocked down? It's a bit like the boxer that's been a boxing champion for 3 years. And now is all of a sudden it's like, what if I go in and what if this time I get knocked down? So it's that fear of failing publicly. It's that fear of failing with my family. And I think that was subconsciously playing out. I wasn't even aware of it, because when I first spoke to you, I was like, yeah, I'm in a good place. And we started to have a conversation. We realized that actually there was a little bit behind that. And actually I was kind of using that as a coping mechanism to kind of keep me stuck where I was. Yeah.
So when you look at where that was born, if you was going to describe how that linked to your childhood, and you can go as deep as you want publicly as you want, you don't have to go into intimate details, but if you was to look at some of that, how would you describe that link between fear of failure and where that was born as a child? You said I always had it.
Yeah. I remember, I think it was our 3rd session together, and you got me to do a visualization exercise, I think, which is called the time machine. And you got me to rewind back. And I found it really difficult to begin with. I had to relax into it because I was thinking, well, maybe it was university. And anyway, we rewound back to when I was at primary school. And I'll never forget this. I remember in class, we had to draw something, and I drew a surfboard. And in my head, it looked like this amazing surfboard. And I remember the teacher, I can't remember what the teacher said, but the way I interpreted it was like, that is like the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. It was almost like my first experience of shame and guilt. And
Mm.
this, something that I was proud of and I put out to the world or to the teacher, and I was expecting validation. And yeah, this teacher basically criticized it. So I remember that was probably like my first memory of being not feeling good enough, and maybe subconsciously that, stopped me from doing things moving forwards, definitely.
It's amazing, isn't it, how all of this stuff is born? Because then it goes back to that point of, wow, one moment. And often, and I've worked with some clients that have had some real serious trauma. And
Yeah,
often the things that get them around not feeling good enough isn't the trauma. Sometimes it's just a passing comment from a teacher or a sports coach or a family member. And that child just internalizes that, and as a result impacts their ability to think and feel. It impacts their risk appetite as well. How risky are you willing to how much are you willing to take risk? And I think you are very aware, insofar as your risk profile, as to what risks you'll take and which ones you won't. So that compounded there. So it'll be interesting to see over the coming months, now that you've made those shifts over the last few months and this year, to see how your risk profile starts to develop and how you're seeing the world. Because I
yeah,
suspect it's probably going to evolve.
yeah. But it's already changed a lot. You talk about the way that you see the world. Like if you're wearing dark sunglasses, you see everything as dark. When you put rose tinted glasses on, you see everything as rose tinted. And I remember, yeah, just a few things that we talked about in our sessions changed my perspective on stuff. And just realizing that I'd never really addressed that issue. And it sounds so daft, like when I actually talk about it logically, it sounds like such a daft situation. But we know that logic and emotions are so subjective, and you can't deny somebody's feelings. So what triggers one person a comment, another person might just brush off and just think, how can that affect you? But it's important to understand that your emotions have a set language, and it's the way you interpret it. And I interpreted that as a massive failure, which then led me to think, right, well, don't put yourself out there publicly. Don't do things that you're going to fail, because it's going to trigger shame. So, and I look at that pattern throughout my life, and it's been, yeah, it's been very, very common. But now I'm a lot more at peace with failing, so to speak, and doing things that scare me. And that's something that you've
Yeah.
really taught me. Like you can still operate despite having these feelings that are uncomfortable, and that's been a huge shift. I'd say the most valuable thing that I've got from working with yourself is being able to operate regardless of your feelings. So you can still feel anxious, you can still feel scared. I was scared about jumping onto this podcast. I was scared going to your event with 120 people that I didn't know. But does that stop you from taking action? No, but it would have done a year ago. So it just shows you that I wouldn't have come on this a year ago. I would have said I'm too busy, I've got too many projects on. I wouldn't have gone to an event last year. I would have said I'm doing something with the kids. So I've learned to accept my feelings, or to realize I can still operate. Feelings are feelings. So I probably got off on a bit of a tangent, but basically to come back to what you said, like my perception of the world has changed a lot through unpicking the things that were holding me back. I'm realizing some different, rewiring my brain basically.
And look at the reward mechanisms that have come out off the back of that. You did the things even though you felt the resistance. And next thing you know, you're not just listening to a podcast in the sort of in the corners of the internet. You're on the podcast, sharing wisdom, sharing knowledge. You're going to events. And that all came from hard work. It came from taking a risk and putting that work in. It came from being brave. And my something that came up for me today. So I was with one of my mentors. So every month I do a monthly board meeting. So I present to one of my mentors. He's basically giving me CEO training, and I present to him the financial results of the company. I present to him our NPS scores, so how happy are our clients. I present the capacity. I present the strategy. I present all of the budget, the finance, the profit, the loss, all of that stuff. And he just read Arnold Schwarzenegger's new book, and we were talking about risk and how we play with risk, and how before I was the opposite. I'd be like, fucking, like, let's go, let's just go all in, let's just see what happens. And I was to the point where I was almost reckless. And then he taught me about risk management and picking, okay, is that a good bet? Is that a bad bet? or whatever. And then we started to realize, okay, it was about 4 or 5 months ago, that risky side of me still wanted to go in. But then 2 months ago, 1 month ago, all of a sudden, that risk taker inside me was still holding me back. And as I was going through that, he gave a quote from Arnold Schwarzenegger's book. I've got it here. If I can afford the downside, there is no risk. Like, really think about that. If I can afford the absolute downside of what I'm about to do, there is no risk. If I can handle this, there is no risk. And if we think about the work that we've done, Nick, the reason that come to mind is we've built an identity and we've built a way of being where you back yourself even if it doesn't work out. You back yourself even if, you know what, I can fail. And that's really what a lot of this is about, is your ability to think and feel regardless and still perform and still take risks and still go off after your dreams and doing it in an authentic way. So from somebody that was just listening to the podcast to then going through that journey to getting here, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been one heck of a journey, and honestly, I didn't think that this is where it would go. I thought, okay, a couple of sessions, and I'll be fine. But I've realised that there's different levels. There's that saying, new levels, new devils, and it's good. But what you were saying before about the challenge, like I'm getting addicted now to like doing things that are uncomfortable. Whereas in the past, I'd be like, right, it feels uncomfortable. Nope, excuse. Now it's like it feels uncomfortable. I know that avoiding this is going to lead to me know that I'm not becoming the best version of myself. So now I'm kind of like, right, challenge podcast. Yeah, let's just do it. Just being more of a yes man rather than a what could go wrong man. And I think that, again, is down to a lot of the work that we've done, just backing yourself and just realizing that I've been through a lot in my life. I've come out the other side, and to actually lean into it and to give yourself credit for leaning into situations that you find uncomfortable, because that is where your growth lies.
Yeah. And it's understanding when you said there about like where it is that you want to go and what you're doing and where it is. When you start to reassess, okay, how scary is this? And there's let me rephrase that. How uncomfortable is this? Because I believe there is a comfort discomfort zone. And what I mean by that is, for some people, it's training. I'm very comfortable pushing myself in training. I'm very comfortable putting myself in discomfort on dieting. But that's not really a discomfort zone. You've become comfortably uncomfortable, if that makes sense. Or if I rephrase that, you become uncomfortably comfortable. Sorry. So you've got to a place where, you know, if I'm in the gym and if I need to diet, that's easy. I can do that. But when it comes to, okay, well, I want you to put yourself out there and start talking publicly about your experiences, whoa, that's uncomfortable. And we already have the scar tissue, usually if you have a sporting background or a gym or training background, to understand what discomfort needs to happen in order to get to the next level of performance. But we often forget, because our emotions hijack us from a commercial perspective. What is it that we need to do? Where is it that we need to go? And we look at where you're at now. You've got to that place where you are getting to that, where you can be uncomfortable and go, well, it's part of the process anyway. So let's just do it. Let's just surrender. Let's just go and make this happen. Because the more that you're doing that, the more data, the more feedback you get. It wasn't that bad. I don't have to listen to that feeling. But the more you avoid, the bigger avoidance becomes, the more of an issue it becomes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So looking forward now, you've put in a lot of groundwork on fear of failure. You've put in a lot of groundwork on backing yourself and going from unconsciously aware to consciously aware to action when it came to the playing not to lose. What do you now, looking forward, what does life look like, and what's the goals?
Well, I'm just enjoying the journey. Like, the goals is just to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm literally at a place now where I've got more challenges than ever, but I'm so excited to wake up. And I think just reigniting that passion, all the stuff that I've been doing, continuing to work with yourself, learning, going to events. I've just started a podcast myself. So for the last 6 weeks, I think I've been doing a podcast, maybe a little bit longer. And a bit like yourself, like the feedback has been so positive. People that I never thought would reach out have been reaching out and saying, this frame that you gave me has changed my life. I want to start working with you. So for me, it's sharing more of my story, because I think one of my qualities is being humble, but also I can almost put myself down because this fear of, I never want to come across as being better than anybody. I want to show people that I'm successful, but you come on board, I want to bring people up. So I think there's so much more that I want to share with people, my own personal stories, stuff that we've talked about on this podcast about my childhood. So just being open and honest. And I think you're very, very good at that. And other coaches that I look up into the industry, people like Joe Parrish, they're just very, very humble and successful. So I think for me, it's continue to public speak, do podcasts. I'd like to speak in front of an audience. I'd like to be one of those people that speak at your event, those kind of people. So for me, it's just keep leaning into challenges, get myself out there. I think I've got an interesting story. I've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom. I've got a good heart. I've got good intentions. I've built a level of success, which I'm really proud of. So it's continuing to build that and share that and have an impact.
I love that. I love that. And again, that's you going on the front foot. Even you coming on the podcast is going on the front foot. I want to start speaking. I want to start getting on podcasts. I remember when you said, should I launch my own one? I said, yeah, don't overthink it. Just get them out. Just get them out. Look at you going on the front foot. And the more you go on the front foot, the more I believe you get more, you build more confidence. Because in boxing, you've got front foot fighters and you've got counter-attacking. And counter-attacking is fun, but it's very reactive. It's very like you're trying to sort of pick them off. Whereas when you're on the front foot, generally those fighters are perceived as to be more in control. Not always, but most of the time they're more dominant, they're more in charge. And I do think taking those risks and having the backing and the belief where I might get this wrong and I'll be okay. I might get this wrong, I might not be okay, but I'm going to try anyway. That just breeds the next level of confidence, and it moves and it moves and it moves and it moves and it moves. And now that you're doing that, you are now starting to see what Matt McConaughey calls green lights. So Matt McConaughey talks about red lights, yellow lights, and green lights. He's got a great book. I really enjoyed his books. It's almost like a mixture of here's my life story and here's a few personal development lessons in between. Like really quite poetic. And they talked about red lights are when life isn't working. Everything you're trying just isn't happening, and people that are there aren't doing what you need to do, and you're just getting feedback from the universe that just says no, 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 no. Yellow lights is you kind of in maybe land, or you kind of hit a level of plateau and you kind of haven't, there's another level, but you're not quite sure. And green lights are when the doors start to open. Business starts to attract to you. You start to get more opportunities. You start to get more invites. And you've gone from that yellow light, now you're starting to see the green lights because you've backed yourself to take action in different ways that you might have taken action before to open up those green lights. And you can feel it both physically, mentally, emotionally, but then also tangibly within your business results, which is great.
And I think it's when you look back as well, like deciding to invest into yourself has led to so many positive outcomes because, even up until working with you, Kieran, I wasn't doing social media videos really. It's only been a recent thing. And then I started to develop the confidence to do that. And then come into your event, and then I've met people at your event now that I'm in contact with. And I've done a couple of podcasts with people that have invited me onto their podcast, and then you've invited me onto your podcast. So it's amazing that when you kind of jump out the aeroplane, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen, but just to back yourself, and these opportunities come. And I wouldn't have been starting my podcast had I not have started working with you. And now I've started a podcast. It started to help people. People have started to come on board and say that it's really positive influence, and they look forward to it each week. That never would have happened had I not have jumped out of the plane. So I'm starting to recognize that that's where the reward lies, going after what you're inspired by. And it is scary, and things don't work out, and you still have challenges, and you don't wake up every day and feel amazing, but you just know that there's this inner feeling that you are pursuing your dreams. You're going after what you want, and there's no better feeling than that. Honestly, I'm operating from inspiration and drive and purpose, whereas in before I was just operating out of stay safe, take the path of least resistance. So it's been a huge shift.
Yeah, amazing. If you look back at a younger version of Nick, maybe he's in his first 5 years of coaching. Maybe it's 3 years ago he's just stepped into the online world. Knowing what you know now, what would you pass on?
I would say do this sooner. It took me up until, well, about 8 years into my coaching career, it took me till I got my first coach. So I just used books and podcasts. And again, that was a way of me. One is maybe financially, I wasn't in a position to be able to invest in like good quality coaching, but also it was just a story I was telling myself because I was scared of being vulnerable. And I thought I should be able to figure it out myself. So invest quicker, hang around with the right people. That's what I would say. Like, start this journey sooner, reach out, like, don't be afraid of being vulnerable, putting your hand up. And yeah, that's probably one of the biggest things. Go and hang around with the right people. Because just by jumping on your boat is going so fast. Everything that you're doing with TMP, the way you're building the team, the way you're operating, I'm on your boat and I'm being pulled along with your growth and your evolution. And honestly, the last 3 years, my growth has been down to hanging around with people that are really successful and either on the same mission as me, have achieved more than me, or want the same things as me. So just get in the room with the right people, because you will go fast. You will go so much faster with those people in your corner.
Well, it was the Atomic Habits. Atomic Habits, James Clear said, your environment is the invisible hand that guides you. I believe that's, I've associated that correctly. And I find that a rising tide lifts all ships, right? So if you can find the right people, the right values going in the right direction, you'll all just come up a level. You'll all just move up a level. And that's the exciting thing. So it's now getting to that place where how can I have people around me that inspire me, that challenge me, that ask me questions? And then also, sometimes we just need a bit of encouragement. There are times when you just need an arm around the shoulder. Sometimes it's a case of some sharp feedback and going, fuck, yeah, you're right. And it's doing that from a place of love and abundance. And if you can find people where they inspire you and they attack the problem, not the person. For example, if a mistake is made, you stupid idiot, why did you do that? No, that's interesting. How did that happen? Oh, I probably weren't paying attention, or I probably weren't doing that. All right, well, what needs to change in order for us to avoid that again? And it's when you find those people that have those similar goals and they're moving forward, like that energy just breeds more energy and breeds more energy and more energy, more energy, and on it moves, So I totally agree. I totally agree. What would you say some of the biggest tips are that you've picked up on this journey that you could pass on to our audience?
There's been so many, but looking back, I think I kind of alluded to it earlier. It's being able to operate regardless of your feelings. I always felt guilty of having negative feelings or emotions, thinking I shouldn't have this. I've been in business for 15 years. I've got to a really good level. I should be accomplished and I just should feel like a machine. Why am I feeling scared, vulnerable, and all that kind of stuff? But it's actually just accepting, embracing, and still being able to operate regardless. I think that has literally changed so much for me, because as I've mentioned, all the experiences, the podcast, coming to your event, the people, getting invited onto other people's podcasts, that never would have happened had I been operating with my old belief system. So yeah, and there's just, honestly, my emotions throughout the day go up and down. I can have so many different dips, but my focus is still like the emotions are up and down like waves, but my focus is just, I know where I'm going. I know what I need to do each week. I know what tasks I've got in. I know when I'm spending time with my wife and my kids. I know when I'm training. And 89% of the time that plan gets done. Whereas in before, it would be my emotions were running the ship. Now it's the captain that's running the ship. And that was another thing that we discussed, the subconscious and conscious mind. And in my head, we kind of created a visualization exercise where we had the captain, who was like the boss, and then we had the watchman, who was like the emotions. And it was actually bringing those two guys together. I realized that they were both looking out for me. When you're worried about being triggered by something that scares you, such as finances or a client leaving, don't shame yourself for that. This is positive. That's your mind saying, actually, look, there could be potentially a problem. But I was labeling that as a bad thing and as a bad warning. Whereas now I've learned to harness that actually it's a good thing. Like, my mind is trying to help me. It's trying to support me. And it's me understanding how those different components work and operate, which has been the key. So it's been bringing the emotional side and the logical side together.
Yeah, for anybody that can't see it, that's listening to this, I'm smiling. And the reason I'm smiling is because you're essentially able to feel any emotion and not judge or shame yourself for it. Like that's a big thing. That's not a normal thing in ambitious minds. Ambitious minds are always judging themselves for not feeling enough, for not feeling worthy. And often we create these perceptions that everybody around us feels amazing. Everybody must feel great. Everybody must feel, they must just be so much further ahead than me. I remember when we were talking before the ahead of the event, you said, how did you find the event? Whenever my clients ask me, I'm brutally honest with how I was. That TMP event was one of the fucking hardest projects I've ever pulled off, ever. That was so difficult. And I was traveling at that time as well, if you remember. And I said I've probably averaged about 6 hours sleep for the last 10 days. And I have been taking big financial risk, team risk, presentation risk. And yeah, I'm feeling it. But that doesn't mean I can't perform. And that doesn't mean that we can't have a great session together. And I remember that was a really big one for you. So through that, it's understanding that a lot of people that are doing, because I've had a lot of messages about the event, they're like, wow, like that was amazing. One person said, you just must be a natural at this stuff. I might be good at certain things and creative and whatever, but it doesn't mean I don't feel resistance. That was one of the most I think I said that at the beginning of the day. This is one of the most hardest things I've ever done. Like this wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but it's understanding that, well, that's fine. That doesn't mean I don't do it. It doesn't mean I don't have to pull those off. And it's finding a mission that's so meaningful enough it's worth suffering for. And when we're playing not to lose, sometimes we're just not clear on whether the growth is worth suffering for. But when you make that internal decision of, well, I can feel this shit and still do the thing anyway. I can feel bad. I can feel anxious. I can feel afraid. I can feel doubt. I can feel guilty. I can feel shamed. I can feel angry. And recognize, well, I'm a human being and I can feel those things, and that's not going to stop me from pursuing on my mission. Like that's essentially what I've taken away there. Like it's fucking awesome, Nick. That's awesome. It's powerful.
And I think you sharing that as well, like it's so easy, obviously, with social media, seeing the highlight reels of everybody's life and the best bit. And you go on anybody's social media, it's just, wow, this person's got their life figured out. But when you're the leader that you are and you coach some of the highest performing people in the fitness industry, and you're saying, Nick, like this event is testing me. Like this is, testing my emotional bandwidth. It's just so refreshing. And I think what TMP and everything that you've set up does is it creates this safe space where you realize that we're all feeling the same emotions. For me, it might be jumping on a podcast that makes me nervous. For you, it might be getting 120 people together in a room. We still feel the same emotions, but you're still operating and going ahead with it, which means I can still operate and go ahead with it. So it's very, very refreshing when you realize that we all have those emotions. All humans have very similar emotions. It's just how we respond to them. And I don't think enough is talked about. So therefore it can feel quite isolating. So seeing somebody like yourself constantly doing things that test you and challenge you, I think, well, I can do that. Kieran's feeling this. I'm feeling this. But let's just operate. Let's move forwards. So I think that's really, really good.
I think a phrase to internalize is we're all fellow sufferers. We're all fellow sufferers. We're all experiencing suffering of some form or another. And when you really understand that, you can have a lot more empathy for people. And you can also have a lot more empathy for yourself. You can start to become your own best friend. It's like, it's all right, mate, come on. I know it's hard. Come on. It'll be worth it. It'll be fun. Come on, let's pull this off. Let's challenge ourselves. And leaders go first. That's what I've noticed. Leaders always go first. So for me, I just want to change the way in which the ambitious minds look at their emotions and themselves. I just want them to achieve psychological freedom, not the absence of suffering, the ability to suffer and do it anyway. That's really my doctrine. That's really my philosophy, and still perform and still show up. So when we look at that, the event is just more evidence of that. Like I could play it off, and a lot of people, I think, a lot of leaders in every industry likes to play it off like it was just water off a duck's back. But I just personally see that as disingenuous. It's just not. Like if you found something hard, I think it's much cooler that you found something hard and did it anyway and then pulled it off than it is, oh yeah, it was easy. Because if it is generally easy, you're playing with inside your comfort zone, you didn't push yourself. If it was hard, you pushed yourself past a limit. And that's the bit that fascinates me. And the only way that we can help people feel less isolated is by doing the deep inner work on ourselves, understanding ourselves, getting those stories, and then actually having the confidence to communicate those stories without this fear of, what if I lose my authority? You know, oh, what if no one? Oh, what if I've let down this big charade? Well, at the end of the day, if you've just been brutally honest from the bottom of your heart and soul, there's nothing to hide. And when you have nothing to hide and you're truly authentically yourself, you will attract the people into your tribe that want to be a part of what you're doing. They want to be a part of the mission. They want to achieve some of the things that you've achieved. They want to learn some of the lessons and the knowledge and the wisdom. So that's why I'm always brutally honest when people ask me, how am I? Like if you used to ask me today, I've actually got a slight rib injury again. Remember I did them again. Did a bit more sparring with the Cubans and I got a slight rib injury. And I tried a 5K. My foot wasn't built for it. So not only have I got a rib injury, I got a foot injury. It's frustrating. But on the business side, I'm super excited. We're going through a period of growth and really going after it. I'll always be honest. And I think a bit more honesty from coaches and leaders and air quotes authority in whatever space, I think that's only going to do a good thing because it helps people realize that these human beings aren't any different to me. They feel shit that I feel, and everybody's doing the best with what they have. And that doesn't mean I can't do the things I want. And that's it. That's really it.
Yeah. It's so refreshing to hear that. I remember one session as well, and it's like, "How are you doing, Kieran?" He's like, I'll be honest, Nick, I'm in the red. I'm knackered. I've been traveling a lot, and I think it's just so refreshing. And it's exhausting trying to keep up a front when you are just like a machine or trying to appear to be a robot to the world. You're not. Nobody's a robot. I don't care what level you get to. There are things that are going to affect you because you're a human being, and if you didn't have things that affect you, that would be a dangerous place to be because you'd be a sociopath or a psychopath. So I think it's refreshing when you're just like, yeah, I'm under par today, but I'm still here. I'm going to give it my best. It's such a good mindset to have, and it takes away that pressure that you should just constantly have your shit figured out. You should be this high performer all the time. You're not going to be a high performer all the time. And it's kind of accepting it. And one of the words that really resonates with me that you've used many times is surrendering, just surrendering to how you feel. If you've had a week where you've had, 5, 10 sales goals, you've had a busy week, like you're going to go into the weekend feeling knackered. You're going to feel tired. You might not be at your best in your personal life, but don't beat yourself up. Listen to it, rest, go back, sharpen the saw, and then come at things from a different angle. It's, progress is never up. It's up, down, up, down. But as long as overall you're developing this profile picture, learning lessons along the way, that's going to serve your growth. So, yeah.
Surrender. Honestly, once I learned to surrender, life got a lot easier and my results got a lot better. Like you have to surrender. And that might sound counterintuitive. What do you mean I have to surrender? I can't surrender. And you get stuck in those loops. Sometimes my ADHD can be really crippling, like to the point where I call them ADHD attacks. So it feels like I have 100. This is how I experience an ADHD attack. And I had one when I was sick last month. It feels like I've got 100 Chrome tabs open and somebody's pressing the switch tab button every 60 seconds. So it's like, go get a drink. I walk into the kitchen. Oh, go and put that away. And then I go walk past the fridge. Oh, have we got any food? And then I walk past. Oh, I need to put those shoes in the right line. And oh, there's a knock at the door. Oh my God, I need to go check my phone. Oh, I need to go and see. And this continues to the point where it's switching so much, I don't achieve anything. And then I become anxious. And when I become anxious, the tab switching gets faster. And then it gets to a point where I struggle even just to eat and leave the house because I'm having such an intense experience of the ADHD. And then I get to a point where I'm like, well, I'm not resting, but I'm not working. I'm not doing anything. And then I reach this point where I realize I'm having an ADHD attack. Surrender. Yes, there's things to do, but right now is not the answer. My inner wisdom is telling me right now is not the answer. Sometimes that means lying on the sofa and breathing. And some people hearing this might think, fuck, like Kieran experiences that from time to time. And then, yeah, it gets really bad. But I haven't used that as an excuse. And I haven't stopped it from letting me build the things I want to build. It hasn't stopped me being the person I want to be, operating out of my value set and what I care about and what's important to me and those around me. And when you really start to get to that place of, you know what, I'm just on the fucking floor today, I've got to surrender. And that doesn't mean give up. There's a difference because people think surrendering is giving up. It's giving yourself the space to go, you know what, I'm in the fucking weeds at the minute and that's okay. I'm going to do what I can And if what I can is minimal, then it is what it is. And feeling those feelings, moving through them much more quickly versus beating yourself up and stamping on yourself while you're down and saying like, why are you feeling like that? Why aren't you operating? Why? Becoming your own best friend, or an arm of encouragement. Sometimes a bit of a wind up. Come on, mate. Come on, push yourself. Come on, mate. Come on. And sometimes going, you know what? You're not well, mate. Like rest. And that surrender piece is really, really important. The more that you can learn to surrender and do what you need to do in the moment, the more you can get done over the whole. It's the small inputs of consistency and doing the best that you can that lead to great results. It's never one success is never one big thing. It's never one big silver bullet. Oh, this one marketing campaign changed everything. This one thing is going to change it. It might be a flash in the pan, but those aren't the things that build momentum. So I'm really glad that you brought up surrender because that's so important. So important. So ignore us as an organization, ignore the events, the coaching, the team. But what does the phrase total mental performance mean to Nick? If you had it, how would you know it?
Well, I think it's the theme really of what we've talked about today. It's not the absence of any emotions, it's the ability to still perform regardless of how you feel and to still operate from the captain. You are the boss. Your emotions are just like the weather, and it's not attaching. You wouldn't identify with the rain outside or the clouds outside. So don't identify with your emotions, be aware of them, but still operate, still back yourself, still, take action every single day. So that for me is total mental performance, being able to operate regardless of how you feel.
Amazing. Nick, mate, it's been an absolute honor to be working with you and to have you on the podcast. And I'm just very proud of you. I'm proud of everything that you've achieved, the place that you've got to. And achievement isn't the external stuff. It's the mind, the way that you think, feel, perform, that in particular. And I'm just very proud that you've gone from a listener in the corner of the universe onto the TMP podcast, sharing your story, mate. So a huge thank you. And where can everyone find you?
Yeah, so probably the best way to find me is at Lep Fitness, or just to type in Nick Screeton on Instagram. That's kind of where I hang out the most. So yeah, that's the best place. But also I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you as well, Kieran. Like, your support has been amazing. And you've questioned and you've led me to realizations that have completely changed the game for me. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing. And it's been an absolute pleasure to come on this podcast. So thank you.
A pleasure, mate. A pleasure. What would you say if you look back, like the biggest breakthrough for Nick was the thing that went, wow, this has probably changed the game, and here's some of the outcomes of that?
Just being able to back myself, just being able to go after what I want, have the confidence that it's going to work out. And if it doesn't work out, I'll be able to handle it. And I've got this resilience. It's just this inner character trait that it's not tangible. You can't see it. But it's just this inner belief that I will do whatever it takes to get to where I want to get to. And I know that I will find a way through. It's a belief. It's hard to kind of put into words. It's a feeling that I can do it. It's hard to explain.
If there's anyone that's listening to this is on the fence, what would you say?
Just do it. Honestly, I should have done it 10 episodes sooner than when I did do it. Just literally take action, because you won't regret it. And it's just probably one of the best decisions that I've made is jumping on board. It has changed things mentally so much. And as a byproduct of changing things mentally, the outcomes and my life has changed so much, not just when it comes to business, when it comes to my relationships, how I'm acting as a dad. Even my wife the other day said to me, she said, Nick, I've noticed such a change in you, just how you're operating, how you're handling situations, how you're being pragmatic, how if we're faced with a problem, it's solution orientated. Let's do it. That's fine. We've got this that's coming. Okay, what do we need to do to fix it? In the past, I would have completely freaked out. So when my wife says that, when my son, says that he loves me, and, I just feel this sense that he knows that I'm there for him. Like, I mean, it goes far more than just the business side of things. So just do it, because this experience will change your life. It's scary, it's daunting, but lean into it you will not regret it.
Oh, mate, I appreciate that. I appreciate you, and you've been an absolute superstar. I'm looking forward to continuing on your journey to see just what you're building, mate. It's inspiring.
Thank you.
All right, team. If you found this helpful, then please do share this. We're trying to take the TMP podcast out to the world. If you found it helpful, ways that you can share and help the podcast, share this to your story, and then drop me and Nick a tag. Drop us a message. You know, if Nick shared something with you and you think it really helps, like, let him know. If you picked up something from the podcast, let us know. We're always trying to make this better and more beneficial for the world, and just helping people realize that they're not alone, because they're not. So, team, infinite love, and you will all hear from me next week.